I'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is an open meeting of the Seward, Nebraska governing body. The city of Seward abides by the Nebraska Open Meetings Act in conducting business. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is displayed on the north wall of this meeting room facility as required. Disclosure of meeting recording processes is posted in the meeting room. A participant sign sheet is available for use by any citizen addressing the council. Presenters shall approach the podium, state their name and address for the clerk's record, and ask to limit remarks to 5 minutes. All remarks shall be made directed to the mayor, who shall determine by whom any appropriate response shall be made. The city of Seward reserves the right to adjust the order of items on this agenda if necessary, and may elect to take action on any of the items listed. Please call the roll.
Beck.
Here.
Coulterman.
Here.
Streisand.
Here.
Camper. Here. Singleton. Here. Hendricks.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Wilkin.
Here. All right, first item this evening is the draft minutes of October 5th, 2021. Move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor are Wilkin, Beck, Camper, Coulterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks. 8-0.
Okay, next 4 items make up this evening's consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor are Wilkin, Beck, Camper, Coulterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks. 8-0.
All right, first public hearing, 7 p.m. Consideration of acquisition of real estate commonly referred to as 216 North 8th Street and legally described as the north half of Lot 7 and the west 20 feet of the north half, Lot 8, Block 39, Cloyd's addition to the city of Seward, Seward County, Nebraska, from Jerome and Victoria Glazer. Greg?
Yep, this is a purchase agreement for the last of the 3 water tower properties. It's for $167,500. We did have this property appraised previously pursuant to state statute. It meets all the restrictions and requirements that Kelly needed to get this one done. They will be removing the home from the property if they can do so in time for our calendar timeline. Answer any questions? Otherwise, that's all I got.
Yes, Alyssa?
I need to abstain.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the council? Otherwise, I'd ask someone to introduce the resolution.
I'll introduce resolution.
The resolution has been introduced and is designated as resolution number 2021-22. Would anyone like to move that this resolution be passed and adopted?
So moved.
Josh,
Yes.
just do the public hearing first.
Oh, I apologize. I got excited. This is public comment of the public hearing. Anyone from the public wish to comment on this item? Are we good? All right. I'll close the public comment portion of the public hearing and return to the resolution. It was introduced and is designated as resolution number 2021-22. Would anyone like to move that this resolution be passed and adopted?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor are Wilkin, Beck, Camper, Coulterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand. 7-0.
Alright, item number 2, also public hearing, closure of Community Development Block Grant Economic Development Reuse Loan Fund. Award of $17,161.38 to Kosmicki Cook Associates LLC, DBA Cafe on the Square, 101 South 6th Street, Seward, Nebraska. Greg?
I'll quickly turn it over to Send.
Sounds good. Kelly Gentrup, 7407 O Street, Lincoln. I am here tonight. This is the second public hearing for the Cafe on the Square project. This is a formality required by DED to follow CDBG guidelines to give the public a chance to comment on the process. So just as a reminder, the City Council awarded Cafe on the Square the CDBG funds for a portion of the remaining program income last February. So they were in compliance, they're current on their payments, they've hired the jobs that they were needed to hire, and so we are here now to give the public a chance to comment on the process.
Thank you. There is a public comment portion for the public hearing. Does anyone from the public wish to comment on this item? Seeing no one, then I will close the public comment portion of the public hearing. Return to the council. If you have any questions or comments? Did you have anything you'd like to add?
I do not. Thank you all. I do have some business cards that you guys can pass around. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
No action.
So no action on that item, thank you. We will move on to our administrative items this evening. The first administrative item is the presentation and discussion by the Seward Wellness Committee. Jana, would you like to approach? And Dr. Dominic, thank you.
So it's Jana Hughes, 1825 Deer Run Drive, Seward.
Matt Domney, 1970 Rainbow Avenue, Seward.
I'm gonna wait till these sheets get out. First of all, thanks for having us again. Last time you guys were at the Civic Center basement, so nice to be maybe back to normal a little bit. We were talking, I think it was May. We spoke to you guys, so. It's just one page, two-sided. So we are here representing the committee that's working toward the potential Seward Wellness Center. We have made some progress since the last time we spoke to you guys back in the spring. So first thing I want to talk about is a location. We have settled on a location if this facility does get built. We have 7 acres of land directly north of the Seward Middle School. On the top of this, you can see kind of that location where it would be. This plan goes above and beyond what we would need. It has enough room for some possible long-term expansion. It's the perfect location for the Seward Wellness Center, being across from the middle school. The youth center can be there. The middle school kids can just walk across and attend. We can have before and after school childcare, and so kids can ride the bus up to the middle school and get over to the facility. As you guys know, the trail will ultimately go right beside that wellness center, so anyone in town can jump on the trail and get there safely. So we are very thankful for this donation of land if this project goes forward, and we just wanted to share that we do have that.
We also have a few updates on our funding, and in July 1st, we applied for the Shovel Ready Capital Recovery and Investment Act. And on that July 1st date, we submitted a grant for $5 million. There's a matching requirement to that, and all the matching funds have to come from private sources. The legislature was able to get this act as part of the money that came from the federal government in response to Coronavirus Act there. So we submitted. We thought maybe by the end of that month we would know more about what that's going to look like, and that simply didn't happen because 125 groups all across Nebraska applied for $335 million. The legislature had allotted $75 million. So that has now been passed back to the legislature to reconvene and talk about that. And we do have Senator Coulterman here who has information that's hot off the press, the way I understand it, Senator Coulterman. So we'll yield to him.
Thank you, Matt. Mark Coulterman, 2577 Waverly Road, Seward. I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about this opportunity that exists for the city of Seward and communities all across the state. It's really once in a lifetime opportunity. It's not every year that the federal government says we're gonna give the state of Nebraska $1.4 billion, or $1.04 billion. That is what the state is gonna give for the coronavirus fiscal recovery fund. In addition to that, the city of Seward is getting $1.277 million out of the cities. There's some additional money that's come to the cities, so that's your share. The county's getting $3.3 million, and then capital projects for the state are getting 128 million. But out of this, you have to apply, and when we started this project back in, when we did the budgeting a year ago, this past fiscal year, we had no idea we were gonna get this kind of money. And the state's in pretty good shape to begin with. But, so, about a month ago, we had hearings inviting people to come in and testify on what they would like, what they would expect. And as Mr. Dominy said, the Shovel Ready project, that actually, we actually budgeted $15 million of that last year, and it's in the budget. But in addition to that, we wanted to do more. The Appropriations Committee was really behind this, because the intent is to stimulate the economy. And it's our understanding that the money that's coming into the state from the federal government should be used for specific projects like this to stimulate the economy, get the economy turned around again. Fortunately, in Nebraska, our economy is pretty strong and our receipts are coming in. So on top of that, we have a strong, balanced budget. But the reality is, we had, the Chamber of Commerce at our hearing came in and said, the state chamber, with all the other chambers, our local chamber included, they had a request for $110 million workforce proposal. And then we had $315 million to help communities develop sites in the major supply and logistic hubs. So like our rail campus out here, they could have applied for some of this, and I think they did. And then we have money coming in, and that money is also supposed to be used for housing development, community vitality grants, broadband, high-speed internet access, and things of that nature. The reality is, then there's LB 566, which this committee applied for. And we had already budgeted $15 million, but we didn't know how much we're gonna have. So, as Mr. Dominy said, there were 125 applications from around the state, across the whole state, and $335 million worth of asks. That's a lot of ask. But at the same time, to date, no funds have been allocated to anything. And until we actually get the money in hand, we will not allocate anything. So we expect to get that money soon, at least the first half of it. What we'll do in probably January, we'll start having hearings again on how we can allocate that money. But the important thing for you to understand is, you have to have your match ready to go. If this is gonna be shovel ready, and you say you applied for $5 million, you need to raise $5 million, or these people need to raise $5 million. They've done a really good job of this thus far. If they raise 4, it's my understanding they could get a match of 4. So if we can get $5 million raised privately, and they're on their way to that, then we have the potential to get $5 million. Will we fund the whole $355 million? Your guess is as good as mine. But I am on appropriations, and I will tell you that I'll work hard to see to it that we get our share of that money. And then in addition to that, the nice part about this money is it's supposed to be used for one-time projects. So you'd be in charge of the maintenance and ongoing expenses of this program, but the state would have no other obligations in it. So, as I started out to say, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I hope that you'll support this project in its entirety. It's something that will really help our community grow and thrive for years to come. And I'll turn it back to Matt, but unless anybody has any questions. But the reality is, we all need to get behind this project. It's a win-win for everyone.
Senator, just a point of clarification. The ask that totals approximately $355 million or so, almost all of these projects, and Dr. Dominy, you can assist too here.
Sure.
A lot of these are like ball field facilities and
Exactly.
recreational facilities, like Speedway Motor or Speedway.
Museum.
Yeah. A lot of these are things like what we're looking at here, and so it's just kind of an interesting opportunity because they don't fund these very often or ever.
Nearly every single one of the YMCA's in Nebraska
Applied for these dollars.
Applied for these dollars as
Yep.
well. Yeah.
How will they how will they make the decision if there isn't additional money put in? I mean, is there a scoring system through DED, or who's this run through?
Well, when we set the program up, we set it up so that DED will handle, Department of Economic Development will handle the grant applications. But we're the ones that have to fund it. And so, I would assume they'll ask us, like, out of the $335 million, if we decide that we can afford $200 million towards the shovel-ready program, that's what they'll get to work with. So then they're gonna go back and say, okay, who's ready to go? Now, they've got their application in. It has not been approved because none have been approved yet. I talked to the Department of Economic Development just earlier this week. They have not approved any programs until they know how much money they have. But if you're not ready to go, and the match isn't there, you're not gonna win. So the match needs to be there as high as it can be, and from that, they'll determine who's gonna get what monies. And then they'll rank it according to priorities. Wellness is a high priority for the state, especially a one-time deal, so. Again, it's all about economic development and spurring the economy.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
So do you have a specific ask tonight?
We're not done yet. Okay, flip your sheet over, thank you. So, some other things that we've been working on, we did, and I think we mentioned this back in the spring, we did get some planning funds from the Active People Healthy Seward grant as well as the CCCFF grant. And we have used that those funds for some branding and some high-level planning. You can see the new logo for the Seward Wellness Center. Unless somebody wants to, pay for the whole building, and then we'll let them logo it. And then I'm gonna turn it back to you for the
Yeah.
financing of it.
So again, we continue to work on finances, and as you all know, with construction, the costs just vary day to day. It's hard to get a real handle on it. So at this point, we're really just trying to come up with a formula for the funding, because it's hard to be at an exact amount right now. So currently, we're looking at a 1/3 privately funded, and those are the asks that we'll be going out to the community to seek those funds. And then we have 1/3 that we're seeking from grants, and like the Shovel Ready project and other grants that are available in our community and state. And then we'd also like the council to consider, as we talked about in May, that sales tax piece, having that vote go to the public, and have them consider using sales tax to help fund maintenance and operation and part of the cost of that facility as well. Turn it back over to Jana.
Right. So, why are we here? As Senator Mark Colderman said, we need to get going on our fundraising effort for pledges. And the due date for the Shovel Ready grant for our pledges, even though we don't even know if we're accepted into it, is December 31st. So we want to, as a committee, get out there and starting to get pledge forms. And so part of that, we're going to make a little packet that we're going to take out to the community, and in that packet will be obviously information about the Wellness Center, how it'll get paid for. And we are asking you as a council for a letter of intent that we can put into this packet that says that in the spring you will vote to put it on a ballot for the city of Seward for the sales tax for that last 1/3 of the financing, as well as that the city would run operationally the facility. So if the facility is built, with membership fees and things like that, that would cover the operational costs. So that is our request to you tonight, is the letter of intent for that. And if we can get that tonight, we're hoping to start hitting the road next week on fundraising. And anyone that would pledge to the project, if any of this falls through, or in May it does go for a vote and the city votes it down, it's done. They're not writing checks right now. It won't be unless the dominoes fall where they are, and then they'll be on the hook for the money. So, questions?
I see that you found a new location from when we first were talking.
Well, we were up by the middle school, but
Yeah, up by the middle school.
this is
Yeah,
now a
that's-
for sure location.
That's awesome. It looks like you'll have not only room for the current
Yes,
build, but then
right.
future.
Because when we talked, we were looking at little space right on the middle school property, which would have given us our building, but just that. And now this gives us some substantial room for, yep, growth.
And from what I read here, my assumption is that based upon this project going forward, the land is gonna be donated, so that's not part of this.
That's correct.
Awesome.
Craig, how do we go about doing this? Are we going to, if we approve this, are we taking a vote right now to say that we support this, or are we
It's
just
a-
saying a letter, how are we gonna word this?
What will ultimately happen is I will draft for the mayor to sign a letter of intent that explains exactly what you did tonight, which is we intend to have a vote. It's not binding you to the vote. Sometime in the spring to finalize language to potentially put on the ballot. If that vote fails, we're done. It's not binding you to do that. It's trying to give, and I think you understand,
Yeah.
trying to give potential donors a little bit of idea where it wasn't nailed down before years ago when we were doing this effort, who was gonna run it, how it was gonna be funded. They've kind of laid the general basis down, and this will give donors a clear idea and know that the council is actively being a participant and partner in it, but you are not bound. You cannot put it on the ballot. There's no liability to that, and if the ballot doesn't go through and the citizens vote it down, it doesn't do anything either.
So we're committing though tonight that it's our intent that the city will operate the facility?
Yes.
Oh, no, okay.
We don't know, and Shane's here and our committee, there are no other options. We have opened every door, and so we truly feel that it has to be a city-run facility or this won't function anymore.
I mean, I really support this project, I think it's good. Looks like we have a good plan for financing, and I just wanna make sure that I understood what the city was going to do tonight and what it commits us to in the future. Thank you.
It's basically just a show of seriousness, whether it's the DED reviewing this, as part of the application and determining which grants to award, is also for looking at donors and the fundraising effort. It just basically shows that the city council is serious about moving forward with this project in some capacity. But like Greg said, nothing is binding on this, but I think it does strengthen the argument, or it strengthens the case as far as the grants and the other fundraising potential out there.
Greg, can I have you explain how this sales tax works?
Yes, we are authorized up to an additional 1/2 cent sales tax. Currently, we are at 1.5 cent for the city levy. That authorization is not being utilized by the city of Seward currently. Almost every other community surrounding us is using it because they currently have the authority. And so Lincoln, David City, York, Crete, Beatrice just built their fire station with it. Everyone is utilizing this authority while they still have it, because one of the other issues is, at any given time, the legislature can pull that back and say, hey, everybody, we're done doing that. Anyone that's on it can continue on, but the authority's gone away. And so one of the major arguments was, when we were looking at the sales tax option was, well, before it was nobody else is doing it, so we don't want to have a higher sales tax than everyone else. Well, now we're at the point where everyone else has a higher sales tax, and so now is a good opportunity as any. We hadn't come up with one broach before for that. I hadn't, in my time being here, to utilize that sales tax, and so we just felt like this is one that you could potentially consider. So you can go up to 1/2 cent. You have to get an interlocal partner. They don't really have to be committed to anything other than you have to have an interlocal agreement. So we've discussed but haven't had approved partnering with the school district as our interlocal partner. And so that would be another element that would have to be approved ultimately.
So what are you seeing the sales tax go up to then?
Could go up to 1/2 cent. So right now we're at 1.5 cent, it would go up to 2.
And how does that, I guess I'm not quite understanding that. So like we're sitting at 7
Yep.
right now,
7.5.
Go 7.5.
we would go up to 7.5.
Yep.
So it's just that increase then of the half, that would be
Dedicated
partitioned
to the-
or dedicated over
Yes.
to there, so let's say in rough math right now, we have 150,000 that is brought into the city. Okay, I'm just trying to like process
I have the
this.
number for you.
Perfect.
A half cent, based on our last fiscal year that we just closed out, I think would come to approximately 315,000. But
Total.
for that half cent extra,
Would-
that's not the total, that's the extra that you would be dedicating to the
So
well
315 is what we would be dedicating
per year.
to these guys per year.
To pay off, likely what you do is you would bond and then use those proceeds to pay off the bond.
You know how in Lincoln, they have the arena tax? It's,
Or the parking garage.
or, yeah, and
tax.
there's all these different, it's kind of a similar concept, if that makes sense.
And then Greg, if I remember right, we could set it up so that the sales tax exists for a certain amount of time until it's paid off, or it could go in
Perpetuity.
perpetuity
Yeah.
after that as well, right?
And we'll have to work our way through that in the spring. It's one of the main issues you'll discuss. You'll be required to have some language to hold to whatever your bonding amount is. So say our bonding amount was $5 million. We would have to, based on our projections, hold it out and it could not be repealed for long enough to pay the bond. And then you could say, once the bond's paid, it's done. You could say, the bond paid in 10 years, so if it got done in 8 years, it goes 2 more years, done. Or just say it goes into perpetuity until the council and the voters vote it out. There's a lot of options that you'll be able to consider.
Where would that extra money go to then after the obligation is fulfilled?
It's up to you, you would note that in the,
You could have it
agreement.
go to like upgrades or expand,
you could put it in a perpetual fund, a
For
sinking fund.
operations, maintenance?
Uh, Probably maintenance or capital, you know,
Yeah.
roofs
Capital
and,
improvements.
yep.
right?
You could set it aside for, I mean, again, the facility is built to potentially expand. You could set it aside, and if you were doing well, expand with that funds, and that would meet the letter of the purpose of putting it in there.
Or eventually, if it's a sunset and go, and you can maintain the half cent, it would just go into the general fund.
And this is something
Probably
we have
not
to
under the
explain to
interlocal.
voters?
Can't know that.
You're identifying specifically what,
Okay.
it's just like the portions of our, just like the LB 840.
Right.
LB 840 is designated, it goes to LB
Cause
840.
that's where sales tax goes right now, is
A portion,
a portion.
It's a
What portion?
a small portion.
Very small.
It's 150,000, so if you think half cent creates 300,000 a year, it's probably less than a quarter. Maybe it's a quarter. So
Could you move it to drop to a quarter after the obligation was paid off?
you can do a lot of stuff. I'll let you be as complex or not as complex as you want.
You still have to get the voters' approval, so you don't necessarily want to overcomplicate it, because it can create more confusion. But, you know, our thoughts have been is that we want to obviously pay off the initial bond, and probably have at least some additional, fund, like a foundation type fund available for assistance moving forward, kind of how the library has a fund, and then at some point you can end it. But yeah, those are all questions that can get answered down the road.
So tonight, we decide that, yep, Greg, write a letter so that they can pass it off to their donors, that we're gonna be coming up in the May ballot to have citizens vote whether or not they want a facility, yes or no, and to pay for that facility, whether or not we wanna increase our sales tax, yes or no.
It's probably one vote.
One question on the
One
ballot.
question.
Do you want it, yes or no?
Yep.
And if it
Well,
goes to,
specifically
Well,
the
it's all,
sales tax.
it's all tied together.
Yeah, it has to be the sales tax.
We're
So
not,
if
we're
they
not
say
gonna take
yes-
the, yeah, we're not gonna take the facility, yes or no.
No.
Cause it would look weird if they're like, we don't want the facility, but yeah, we'll tax ourselves. We'd
Or
be like,
opposite.
well, we,
So it's just one, it's a one ballot question.
it'll be a single question.
About the tax.
basically that are raising,
Yep.
okay?
Yeah.
To go to this facility. You have to define the facility, the interlocal partner, and the amount. All in one question.
But not have it too be complicated so that people don't understand what they're voting on.
So I guess my question is if these guys can't raise $5 million by December 31st, it doesn't go on the ballot for May.
No, you guys will still consider it, potentially. I'm assuming you'll consider it no matter what, because somebody's gonna bring it up. But
So there's two reasons to move forward now. One is, so the state recognizes that the city of Seward has said yeah, we wanna pursue this as a community, us here in this room, and we are willing to put it on the ballot in May, as long as our partnering group also does their part. You know, it all kind of ties together, if that makes sense. But
There's a lot of potentials here, cause here's another random potential. We had 2 lines running at the same time that we didn't anticipate this grant. This grant is huge. We were thinking just vote and some small grants back in May when we talked to you. This grant is substantial. There's the potential that they get the grant, they get 5 million, they raise privately 5 million. The vote doesn't go, but then they build a $9 million facility because they have the money. But then it's scaled down, it's really small, or they don't reach the funding, or they go find more private funding. The other option is they raise the 5 million, we get turned down for our application, we don't get the grant, then they come back and say, we have people that are interested at $5 million, city, what can we do if we go out and pursue more small grants to add up to fill the gap? There's a lot of moving mechanisms, and a lot of different things can happen over the next few months. The hardest part for us is that the state and the legislature, we were fully on course to think that we would know exactly where we were on the grant already, and then they shifted back away, which is a good thing. I mean, the fact that they're gonna put more money into this potentially in the legislature is huge. And it seems like a major project that a lot of senators hopefully are gonna be very excited about, because it's probably gonna hit every single legislative district, almost every first-class city, tons of villages. Lincoln and Omaha won it. I mean, the fact that every YMCA in the state applied for it.
So we would show commitment on 2 fronts. One, that they could take to the state towards this very substantial grant. And the second part is they could show donors as well that we have the intent to put it on the ballot, to have that vote on that tax aspect.
But you're not adopting a resolution tonight.
Nope. And you're not committed. If this council votes down and says we ain't putting it on the ballot, it's no harm, no foul. You're not committed to anything. But we're trying to give a signal to the state that that's the direction we're going in and looking, and to donors. I think that's the ask that this committee's looking for. But there's no firm commitment. If you guys say it doesn't make fiscal sense in the spring, doesn't change anything.
I guess I just see it from a different, like, way outside of the box. Like, what is stopping another nonprofit from coming to us and saying, hey, I have this brilliant idea to make this $17 million project in Seward. I need you to raise sales tax and put it on the ballot for the next go round so that you can be a third of my funding and then operate it. Like, are we setting ourselves up for something in the future for another nonprofit to come to us and be like, hey, we wanna see this happening? That's where my mind's going.
Well, if this is approved, this will be maxed out on our sales tax.
So we
So
only
there
have
wouldn't,
so many
so
opportunities.
there couldn't be anything else, cause there would be no room for the city sales tax to be increased. If at some point this goes forward, but then it sunsets, we would have Hassan available. Someone could come forward with a project, it would be up for the council at that time to evaluate that and decide if they wanna pursue that or not. I mean,
Right, so I think one of the things that hopefully clarifies is that this, through state legislation, we have 2% that we could increase sales tax. We're currently using 1.5. So in instance, we would fill this with the half, there wouldn't be another nonprofit coming in because we're maxed out. That makes sense.
And it's not the nonprofit asking for the
Right.
sales tax. That's city money. This will be a city facility. This has been requested and planned to be a city-run operation.
It'd be our bond.
Yes, the other one that's noted is through multiple, predating me even, the Wellness Center has been identified in tons of planning documents and strategic planning and items well before my time as a want and a need and a requested item. I think we have people here that may note that if we have an opportunity to have some other people speak. And so it's been highly, highly requested. And then we had our grant for health, Active People Healthy Seward, and it was identified as far in the number 1 topic for all things wellness, all things health, maternal health, childhood health. It was the number 1 requested item, and we were trying to fulfill that request from that process. And this is the result that came from that through a lot of work by this committee.
Alyssa, I see it a lot like the library, where that was funded primarily by
Right.
a bequest to be built. And then they had private foundation as well, raised a lot of money, but then the city committed to run it, you know, so that's why we operate it, but the whole community benefits from it. So in this case, you know, it's similar. We're coming up with a little more of the money up front through the sales tax, but
And I know this committee has talked about, because I've met with them, and they're gonna continue to pursue, we have what's the CCFF grant?
How much?
How much? $375 now for, I thought it went up even more, but,
It went down because
oh, we saw, yes, I emailed you guys that the other day.
it's normally $575.
Yep.
But because there's no concerts, which funds that, it's gone down to $375 for this next.
We're gonna continue to apply for other grants too, so Hewitt, you name it, because the goal is to try and get the city portion down on this as much as possible. I mean, the portion is to raise the private dollars and raise all the grant funds, but we've been running through this rock and a hard place where it's chicken or the egg. All the private donors are going, well, I don't know if I wanna commit, because I don't know if you're gonna do this. Well, this step by the city is kind of that backstop, hopefully, to give people comfort to go, okay, this is real, they're going forward with this. And again, if the voters vote it down or you guys don't wanna put it on the ballot, that's the end of it, and I think this will be probably the end of the wellness discussion. I think that's kind of the commitment that all these people involved in this have done, because we don't know what else to do anymore.
so Greg, if they come up with way more money than they thought,
Wouldn't that be
could
something?
we ask for like 1/4% more sales tax instead of half?
You could, absolutely.
So we wouldn't have to use the whole half of
Nope.
percent if we didn't
And again,
need to.
if
We
your
will-
bond,
We'll come back and give you updates of where we're at.
and if your bond gets paid off way early, you could sunset it early. Again, there'll be a mechanism no matter what in the initiative, the ballot measure, for the council or the voters to say, okay, we're good, turn it off. You have to have a mechanism to shut it
The
down.
biggest thing that, I mean, once you set it up for the city to vote on it, let the people decide. It's as simple as that.
So who's gonna be responsible for sewer, water, electricity? And then the next question would be, is our annex line up to the end of to the north side of the cemetery? So we're not annexed to the other side where this would be going?
Currently, right now, there are all utilities to this site. During the Waverly Road project, the sewer main extension was completed by Star Street under Waverly Road. So this site will have all utilities connected to it currently right now today.
It's on the north side of the road, right?
Yep. So it's all there, so there will be no extension by us to have to do anything. It's all there for the developer to build from. What was your second question? The annex, we will annex it. I mean, we're not gonna not annex if we start developing across Waverly Road, so.
You have bids and everything like that? So how do we, like, so when you say 1/3 and 1/3 and 1/3, it's just 1/3 off of like
Here's the
whatever
deal.
number
We
we're coming
started
up
this,
with?
we were looking at 10 to 12, and now you look at numbers and it's 12 to 15. But in a year from now, the numbers might be back down to 10 to 12, we don't know, and so we're going with this, and no one will, steel has gone up a ton, you just won't get any bids yet. We would not do, and we won't even do detailed design of the facility until after, if it went to a vote, after we got that approval. So time-wise, if we get that approval if you guys put on the ballot, we get the approval in May, then we would actually start detailed design, and then you can go out for bids and maybe start, building this fall.
So this will be underneath the rec department then?
It'll probably be its own department, but, I mean, we'll figure out some of those logisticals.
Do we just need to just make a regular motion here for this?
Motion to authorize,
Okay.
Is there anybody else?
what's that?
There's other people who have nothing else to add.
Well, but to answer your question, yes, just a motion to authorize the letter of intent, basically I'd sign it, authorizing me to sign the letter of intent. Kelly, is that fair? Okay. We do have a lot of people here this evening. Before we move on to that, does anyone from the public wish to comment on this item, or is everything that's said? Yes?
Could I just ask a quick question about the 1/3? Did I understand
You have
correctly?
1 second, you need to come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
It's just Dana Severs, 222 Wildwood Road. I was just curious on that 1/3. Is that 1/3 that you'd be asking for the building of the thing plus the tax increase for the ongoing maintenance and running of the facility?
Ongoing maintenance and running the facility would be from dues and money made from the format physical child care. The facility should cover operational once it's running. This 1/3 is to build the facility.
So you are asking for the 1/3 from the city in
Yes.
addition to the tax increase?
No.
No.
No, you would take
The
it out of the
tax
tax.
is the 1/3.
Got it. Okay, that's all I want. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments from the public? Jonathan, you want to say something?
Yes, very briefly, Jonathan Jenk, 616 Bradford Street, Seward County Chamber Development Partnership. This has been identified in our multi-year strategic plan. I'm not representing the board's endorsement, we have to go through a formal process as a board, but this has been identified in our multi-year strategic plan as a priority. We were active in the Active People Healthy Sewer, it was a clear priority for the community. So I think it's important to consider, and all the efforts that have gone on over the years, I've been doing this almost 10 years. It seems like we're starting to align what we need to try to make this a successful effort. And so at least wanted to share, it has been, even just from a countywide standpoint, that this is a need, and we've heard this from other communities, it's not just a Seward thing. I'm confident that there will be other support from across the county, because this is an amenity that we need to take that next step as a county.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks.
Unless there's anyone else that wishes to comment, we turn it back to the council. Would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I was gonna say, oh, go ahead.
Well, okay. I would move to authorize the city of Seward to provide a letter of intent to the Seward Wellness Committee for our consideration to put this on the ballot in May of 2022.
Second.
To increase the sales tax.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor are Wilkin, Beck, Camperth, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand. Voting against is Hendricks.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And we will come back at some point and give you updates as we go. So, appreciate it.
Appreciate it, thank you. Okay, next we have item number 2, consideration of a resolution approving the street closure across on Highway 15 for Seward County Chamber Development Partnership Christmas Festival Committee Annual Lighted Christmas Parade Permit on November 27, 2021. Jonathan Jenk, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Jonathan Jenk with the Seward County Chamber Development Partnership, representing the Christmas Festival Committee tonight. Thanks for the consideration of the annual support of the Christmas Festival. This is our 11th annual event. Things will be very similar to past years, having Santa House on the Courthouse Square, reindeer run, those sorts of fun things that the community comes to love. Thousands of people enjoy this, and of course last year we had to do the reverse parade. We're excited to go back to a regular parade, and so we would ask for the same consideration for the parade route as we have in years past.
Thanks, Jonathan. Any questions for Jonathan? If not, anything, the motion. I'm sorry, someone introduce the resolution.
I'll introduce it.
All right, the resolution has been introduced, and it does say that as resolution number 2021-23. Would anyone like to move that this resolution be passed and adopted?
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor are Wilkin, Beck, Camperth, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Hendricks. 8-0.
Thanks,
Thank
Jonathan. Item number 3, consideration of a resolution adjusting recreation fees, increasing fees for use of cattle athletic training facility. Greg.
Just some clarification on some, and then the big one is the adjustment of the baseball team registration fee per season. This is our teams that just go in and they book a standard time every week, year in, year out, for the entire season there. So that fee's $400. And then just clarifying, we used to have a bunch of different tiers for single use, and it was very complex, and we had prime time and not prime time and all these other things, and they just said, just get rid of that, make it one flat fee. And so the recommendation was just use single use. So if it's a team, it's $20 per hour, and if it's an individual or somebody utilizing a batting cage, they can be with a parent. They don't have to be like an individual, like one person that's walking out of the door. It's $10 per hour. This was recommended by the Parks and Recreation Committee, I believe.
What was the previous amount for sewer teams? Cause that was the only one that's changing, right?
Yes, and then all the rest of them were just kind of eliminated. I believe, was it 325, Derek?
Let me see if I can pull it up.
And is this increase going towards like the needs of replacement of equipment and things like that?
Goes
or-
back into the general fund to help offset the costs. I mean,
Okay, so,
we're not placing it like a sinking fund, so.
You asked about which fee exactly?
It's the team registration per season, should be the
It was
first one.
$300 for
300. And we did meet individually and speak with the softball association and the baseball association, Legion. Legion doesn't do this because they're technically a rec team, but, and so we let them know. We had a internal meeting before we met with Parks and Rec as well, to let them know and talk about it, so.
and so if they needed some things replaced items wise or whatever, they just request that?
Well, they have a fund themselves that so for instance, the batting cages and lighting and everything that was added to the softball complex, they raise funds and then they request, and then we usually end up providing labor and concrete and other things like that in relation to the project. So we'll do our own ones, but we recrown the fields, we put in and helped with the new sound system on the various fields. So
So the
there's
equipment
no,
that the facility came with originally was just donated, or that's city,
it's all city.
that's all city? So if there needed to be batting cages replaced, sock nets, softball and pitching and baseball machines, pitching machine balls and 4 new tees, who's responsible for that replacement?
We worked through that. Some of that's because a lot of that equipment is utilized heavily by the high school, because it's not utilized by Concordia. So the high school goes into this facility as well. The cattle training facility was given to us for the high school in the city. This use is all city use. So these are private teams coming in and utilizing the facility. They're not city rec teams. They're not our softball teams. They're not our Legion teams. They're not our high school baseball teams. They're not our high school softball teams. These are the private teams that charge private fees. So.
But are still allowed to use city equipment?
Yep. And that's why they pay the fee. Because there's also teams from outside. See, as you see, there's Seward-based team registration versus non-Seward.
But the fees increasement doesn't replace the equipment that's broken?
Nope.
Because that needs to be replaced by the association?
It's a mix. Because again, the school's utilizing it too. So we get together with the schools of Brock or Eber or whoever it was, is like, hey, we really want to get a new pitching machine. The city's not using the pitching machine. The city doesn't use it. We don't have teams going in there for the most part. Our recreational 8-year-olds don't utilize the cattle facility very often.
Right, now I get that.
And so we get together and we usually are approached by the high school teams or the private teams and they're like, hey, we want to pitch in and buy a new pitching machine. Okay. And then they get together, they fundraise and they do that. That's how we ended up with the batting cages on the outside of the softball complex. But it's technically all ours because somebody has to own it and keep it and maintain it.
So they basically set the priorities of what they want fixed or replaced, and then they go out and raise the money to pay for it, and then they pay for it, and then it goes in, then the city owns it at that point.
But for instance, we're gonna replace all of the, basically AstroTurf inside of it. That's a huge expense that we'll undertake, and we'll clean that out, strip it all out, and then apply new, field turf, or not field turf, but I always call it AstroTurf. Carpet. So we handle the big capital expenses, maintenance to the building, replacing the sidewalks, the concrete that leads up to it, parking lots.
Greg, how many teams are non-Seward teams?
Not many. Usually you find you got like 1 or 2 kids that play, they're Seward kids, and then they're somehow attached to.
Cause I thought we now require teams to have a Seward coach,
Not to utilize this facility.
not to use,
Nope.
to book a practice session.
Yeah, they just have a one-time per hour of $100.
Where does that requirement come in?
What?
Is there a requirement of that? Is that, I don't,
Yeah, I thought there was something like that too, 'cause
We
there
have a
was-
requirement for something that teams have to be made up of 75% Seward players and the coach has to be.
Might it be
Seward.
for fields and practices?
No, it was for the facility too, cause there was a Seward team that had ended up having to go to Lincoln because they had like 5, I don't know, I'm gonna throw a name out there, Elkhorn
Yeah,
players
I-
on their team,
I
and
think it was
so,
age, it was based on the age, if I remember right.
I think council would be well served to have an explanation some night in the future at a council meeting where Parks and Rec people just explain all this to us. and kind of
yeah, cause I
sort it
think,
out. Because it gets confusing, and as a liaison to the Parks and Rec committee, it sometimes is confusing to try and figure out who is representing what interests as far as the committee goes. So I think, maybe council could ask someone
I
to
thought
come
it
up
had
and
something to
explain
do
it.
with priority, where
The
if
pri-
a Seward team wanted it and an out-of-town team wanted to use it, the Seward team got it as priority.
And we have different priorities within just the city too. The first priority is technically the city rec teams. They're all city facilities, so the city recreational teams have the first priority. Then we have our contractual obligations, so Concordia, they need to utilize the facilities, and then we have the high schools.
I can remember the group coming in, it was an age group and had to go into the Lincoln because they could not play at this because of their age group. And because there was different ages that were doing or getting to use the facility, and the other ones had to go to Lincoln because basically they were pushed
Yeah.
out.
And the teams that are considered what you would call them travel teams or private teams, they really are still Seward residents. It's not like the parents don't live here for the most part. They are still Seward people. It's not like, I feel like we're calling them some sort of outsiders, that they're some sort of outside group that doesn't belong in Seward, coming in here to use our facilities, and when the vast majority really still are Seward residents.
Yes, I think the argument, and you guys will wanna meet with the committee and have a discussion with this is an old battle
Yeah.
that other parents come and say, yeah, but they're select teams. My kid doesn't get to play on that team, so why do I have to subsidize them?
Right, but the kids on those select teams still live and go to school in Seward, and their parents live and work in Seward and pay taxes in Seward.
They choose to be on a select
They-
team and not
right.
a rec team.
So I guess I really just need some better explanation. It doesn't have to be,
And I think what
Better way, but-
you're referring to, John, was a flip-flop. Those teams were coming out here because it was like $1,000.
Cheaper.
It was
Right.
ridiculous how much
and
they
we've
were.
raised
And we
rates
kinda
since
tried to
then.
block that,
Yeah,
so that it didn't happen, is what I remember.
But there was kids that, from Seward, that based on their age group and that did have to go into, basically into Lincoln. I can remember that very well.
Like, there's tons of that going on right now though. I mean,